hitting record. All right.
Okay.
We're on.
Great.
Stephen Vitale. So I wanted to pick your brain and your knowledge of the properties that you manage. Maybe first some context of who you are and the properties that you've been blessed to steward and steward.
Sure. So my name is Stephen Vitale, and I've lived here in Martin County for about maybe 25 years. And I'm a real estate attorney. I went to University of Miami for law school, and I started practicing in Miami for a law firm, and I hated that. So I moved up here and started practicing on my own. And I've been doing that for about 25 years. And I have a big family. I have 7 children.
That's what I've heard about you, and I love that because I do too. I have 4. You got me smoked.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Fantastic. What are the ages?
So 5, 4, 2, and 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So I'm in deep.
Wow.
They're all little. What's your spread?
My youngest is 11, Aiden. And then I have Anna, my youngest daughter, is at Clark. And she's also at Jensen Beach High School, where she does the choir and the plays. They allow her to go back and forth. She wanted the smaller environment of Clark, but she wanted the extracurricular activities at Jensen Beach High School.
If I was going to quiz you, would you know all of their birthdays?
Oh, I would, but I'd have to think about it. But
exactly.
I would.
Exactly.
I definitely would.
So let's...
Then I've got some in college, and then I have some that have graduated college.
So your oldest is?
My oldest is Emily, 27.
27.
Yeah, and she actually
and youngest
is in
is
St.
11.
Louis right now. She's working in St. Louis.
Are you trying to get her back?
She's coming back for Christmas
Okay.
for 3 weeks. Looking forward to that.
I feel like I'm going to want all my babies close.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The other ones are either in college or they're all here. I'm blessed. I have a lot of
Good.
family that lives right in the vicinity.
Good.
All of my immediate family, which is great.
So we could probably talk about our kids forever, and it would be just interesting to us.
Absolutely.
But how did you end up owning and managing Colorado Inn?
Sure.
How did you start picking up these buildings and preserving them where in the current environment, they would otherwise be apartments or, some other new...
Sure. So I had started investing in downtown Stewart. Actually, originally, my dad and I invested in the post office arcade.
Okay.
My dad fell in love with downtown Stewart when he
I didn't realize you owned that back there.
when he was introduced.
What was that
to
restaurant
this
that was
area.
back in there?
It was called David's in the Courtyard.
Yeah.
That was our restaurant.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the first kind of redevelopment project in Stewart that we had.
That was the first one?
Yeah. We basically rehabbed the whole building and put in, the beautiful tile there that's there now. And we put the fountain in the middle and those beautiful...
It's beautiful.
Those beautiful French windows that are through the courtyard. And
that had to be a labor of love because that was a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
What you did back there, and it couldn't have been cheap.
No, it wasn't. But
right.
It was back then. It was different. The town was kind of just starting to have its little renaissance. It was just the beginning.
That was what, the 90s?
This was back in like the late 90s, I believe. Yeah. So we had we got our feet wet with that project, and then I think about 17 years ago, maybe, that semicircular building on Haney Circle, which is called the DeHone Building. That building was purchased, and that's had different commercial tenants throughout the years. And it's a beautiful building. It's It's got like an Art Deco kind of architecture. Well, a couple of years after buying that building, the owner of the building next door, whose name is Mike Braid, who owns a lot of properties here in Stewart. He came down with what he thought was going to be a fatal cancer. And he approached me and asked me if I wanted to purchase the building since I owned the building next door. He also owned the Italian bistro behind, which used to be called Jerry's La Familia, which is actually fronts 18 Seminole Street. And I went ahead and purchased that building from him, the two buildings. What's now the yellow hotel building and the Italian bistro behind it. And it was apartments at the time. So I just inherited the tenants and I started operating it that way. There was also some businesses on the ground floor. And it was in about 2008 when the real estate market took a real dip. I found myself unable to continue to support my family at the same level because my real estate law business really tanked, and I was kind of twiddling my thumbs for a while. And that was when I had to decide, how am I going to make this all work with these buildings? Because I forgot to tell you about the building next to Mike Braid's building. Same thing happened. About 3 months later, somebody approached me about purchasing that building. And that was the original Coventry Hotel building that was built in 1914, and it was operated. It was the first brick building in the city, and it was built by the Coventry family. They also built the building that Mike Braid owned in 1917, I believe.
So that Coventry sat in the same spot that it sits now, or it was.
Oh yeah, no, those were built in those locations. The Coventry Hotel, which is on the corner of Colorado and Seminole, in 1914. And then a few years later, the same family built what they called Coventry Apartments. But they kind of ran it all as a hotel. So I had purchased all of these buildings and kind of some of them in the height of the market, like around 2007. And then all of a sudden, as everybody knows, the market tanked in 2008. And I had to figure out how to make it all work. So I had discovered that the properties used to be operated as a hotel. And that was when I decided, let me take a stab at trying to turn this back into a hotel. And I started renovating the suites one at a time. And then when I had enough ready, I started operating it almost as a bed and breakfast. And I discovered that it worked. And it was something that was good because it was a shorter term rental. So people were only coming for, 2-3 nights, and they were respecting the property. You get paid by credit card beforehand, so you don't have to deal with the issues of people not paying rent. And I liked that. And I also enjoyed the renovation process because I grew up, I was telling you a little bit about my dad, Otto, who is really wise in real estate.
I was wondering who Otto was because I saw your son's on his art. It's
Christopher Otto.
Yeah, so I was curious if it was Otto Stitman or
his middle name
an Otto
is
family.
named against my dad. So
got it.
My dad grew up in New York, and he was very successful in real estate. He's just has an eye for real estate, and he has a sense about it. And he's guided me a lot and helped me, especially with these properties and what to do, which, when to buy one. And I learned from him because he, in New York, he probably rehabbed, I saw him growing up, rehab so many, maybe 100 different historic houses that he would take and he would fix them up. And sometimes I would work at them with the crew that would be working on that property.
That's great.
So, I learned a little bit about what to save, what not to save, what has character that's worth saving. And so I got some experience with that. And then when I discovered that the hotel idea, the boutique, I call it a boutique hotel. When I discovered that worked, it's weird. I didn't really myself go out and pursue this. It was like people kept coming to me. So then somebody came to me. There was a house located at 38 Seminole Street, which was an old Sears and Roebuck kit house that was constructed on the site. You know, I don't know if you know how the Sears and Roebuck kit houses work. They used to
go into it. This is great.
They would bring it was like the original kit home, the original model home. But people would buy them, in a catalog, and then they would deliver all of the materials. And then there'd be like a local contractor, and a lot of times it was people in the neighborhood would get together and they'd put it all together. That's what happened with this house. So somebody had approached me about that, and I walked into it and I saw, it was kind of run down, but it had these great bones, and it had all the great old Dade County pine wood and all this amazing wainscoting and beautiful beams in the ceilings. And I knew it was a gem, so I purchased it. And I said, you know what? This was kind of before all of this Airbnb and vacation rental things really took off. But I said, let me do this as a short-term rental that I can market through the Old Colorado Inn, which is the name of the boutique hotel. And so I renovated that, and that started working great. And then as other properties came available in the vicinity, since I learned how to do this and it was becoming successful, I started purchasing more. And that's how it came to be.
You did a great job. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm showing everybody so they can see. And so what happened after 38? What was your next?
So after 38, this is where my dad was very instrumental, and there was a piece of property that's called the Ernest Lyons house, which a wonderful gentleman named Dr. Conley, who was a local skin doctor. He owned it, and he renovated it a long time ago. And it's got a great history.
I want to hear all of it.
Yeah, it's the oldest house in Stewart from 1890. And they had the first baby born in Stewart in this home. The first wedding ceremony was performed in the house. The first church service was in the house. The first school classroom was in that house. And it's also a literary landmark in the state of Florida. So there's like about 20 of these literary landmarks throughout the state where writers lived in the home and they wrote, significant works in the home. So he wrote the many things in the home. He was the editor of the Stewart News, and he was a big conservation writer, and he won all sorts of awards. He wrote My Florida, and he wrote The Last Cracker Barrel, which are great books because you can read one chapter and it's not related to another chapter, and it's only 3 or 4 pages long, and it may be about something like the river, or
they were his columns.
Yeah,
right.
They
put them all together.
He had a chapter about this mango tree in the backyard of the Lyons house, and it's just very interesting. You can buy them at the Stewart Heritage Museum.
Okay.
So anyway, that house came up for sale. Dr. Conley wanted to sell it.
Thank you for buying it.
Oh, and he was a wise guy. He assembled not only that Ernest Lyons house, but he also purchased the lot next to it that had a house that I think was destroyed by a hurricane.
Okay.
And it became a vacant lot almost.
Behind it?
No, to the
was it originally those two houses?
To the left of the house.
Okay.
There was a vacant lot that had a house that was destroyed by a hurricane. Then behind his property, there was a lot that fronted Osceola Street that used to be an office of I think it was accountant's office. Well, he assembled this little collection of properties, and then there was an alley in between the Osceola Street property and the Seminole Street property that he had abandoned by the city. So that now he owned fee simple title to the entire piece, and he put this beautiful pool in the backyard, which is like it's like a Four Seasons resort pool. It's gorgeous, it's a golden mean sized pool, which means you can do laps in it. It has a whole lap lane, and it has an attached spa. So he kind of made this little compound for his family, and he did a great job with his original renovation. But my dad was instrumental in saying, "Hey, you need to get this piece. This piece is key." And I kept saying, "No, I got too much." At this point, I was running this hotel kind of by myself almost. I had a limited staff. My wife was, taking care of 7 children.
No big deal, right?
So I was running a law practice too at the same time, trying to do all this to keep the show running with my family, and keep these properties going. So I was really busting my butt for a long time, and I was worried that maybe I can't handle this, but we went ahead and took a stab and did it. And he was right. It's an amazing property.
It's a treasure, man. It's an absolute treasure.
And then what we decided to do with it was let's keep doing what we're doing. This is working. Let's stick with this historic charm concept. And there was a house that was located on Seminole Street where the current Sailfish, what is it called? Sailfish condos? Sailfish Cove condos, right?
K's Central.
Now exist, which is approximately a 30 unit condominium complex. Well, it was a 2-story home that was built in 1914 that was originally called the Clifton Guest and Fishing Lodge. And this house also had amazing bones, all Dade County pine. Great thing about this house too is that there's a local decorator who's a wonderful lady named Diane Devant, who actually was brought here, introduced to this area by Wayne Huizinga, because he had his big clubhouse on the St. Lucie River, and he brought her down here, I believe, to decorate it. And she fell in love with Stewart because she was from North Carolina. Stewart has so much old charm. She loved it, and she bought this home, and she put all her little decorator touches into it. So it really is a gem. So when they were going to redevelop this property, there was talk of it being knocked down. So I approached the owner and asked if he would be willing to allow me to move the house to the vacant lot that was part of Dr. Conley's complex that I purchased that was adjacent to the Lion's house. And he agreed. And so I did that project about maybe 5 years ago, I think. And it was a big project because we had to get the house loaded onto a barge, and there was the boardwalk in the way. So we had to build a bridge over the boardwalk, and then we had to load the house onto the barge and then float it down the river about, 1,200 feet, maybe 1,500 feet. And then I had to get an easement from the property owner at the landing point to bring the house up and then slide it across the street onto my property.
It's amazing that you have any color left in your hair. That sounds so stressful.
It was a fun project. There's a lot of red tape you got to deal with moving a house. You got to take down power lines.
1914. How does
very
that thing?
Expensive.
I guess they built them right back then. What you think?
The
How
homes,
does that stay together?
They were built better because of the craftsmanship and the materials. Because when I say Dade County pine wood, that wood is the hardest wood you can get. In fact, some people think it's better than like the modern.
But not brittle? Hard but not brittle somehow?
Correct. That's right. It's got a little give to it. It's interesting. But that project, it was a fun project.
What did you end up doing with that?
So
house?
I moved that to in between that first house that I bought that I told you that was at 38 Seminole and the Lions house. There was this vacant lot. So I moved that house to that lot. And what I did a little bit of a renovation, and I decided to continue doing these short-term rentals. So I wanted to honor the history, the name Clifton Guest and Fishing Lodge. That's what we call it, and it has 2 stories. I built a separate entrance going up to the second story, and you can rent either floor separately, or you can rent the whole house as one home. So I wanted to. There's great history to the house in that one of the key people who lived in this area, Ralph Evinrude, who was involved with the motor business. He used to come fishing at that lodge when he was younger, because Stewart had the best fishing in the country, and that's how he got introduced to this area. And then he met Frances Langford, the famous movie star, and together they became like, fantastic patrons of our town. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to honor them, because I kind of felt bad about, the Frances Langford property out in Jensen Beach, mm-hmm. that she had these beautiful homes and this beautiful, it was almost like I don't know what you call it, but it was a pavilion. I don't know if you ever went back there. It was this gorgeous pavilion that she had on that property. And then a company from Miami came in and purchased it, and they just took, it was like an atom bomb went off. There was not one structure, not one tree, not one piece of vegetation was left on this pristine riverfront property, hundreds of acres. And now it's it's a nice development. I think I did a couple of closings there for some clients, but I wanted to. I felt that something should have been done with that something to honor her, yes. Other than just they did name it. They did give it Langford. I don't even know what the name of it is. Do you? It's like Langford Land. I can't remember what the name is.
Have you heard the line that they named the development after the animal that they displace? It's the same thing. Yeah. Osprey Preserve, and it's a bunch of apartments or something.
So I wanted to honor them. So I call the top suite the Langford Suite.
That's great.
And then I call the bottom suite the Evinrude Suite, since he used to stay there when it was a little fishing hotel. So that's that property. And then the same Lyons House property, mm-hmm. When I discovered this process of moving a house, and I kind of enjoyed it myself.
Sky's the limit now, right? You can do this everywhere.
But it's another situation. It's so weird that I didn't kind of really pursue a lot of this. Another person came to me, called me up on the phone, and said, "Hey, there's a development going in over by Fraser Creek, and there's this old cottage, and they're going to be knocking all these things down." So I got in my car. I was like, forget it. I said, forget it. I didn't even think about it because I was kind of burnt out. But then I was like, okay, let me get in my car and go look, pique my curiosity.
There you go.
I drove down the street and I saw these structures, and this one cottage was just a real gem. And again, it's built around 1915, all great materials, all that great charm, beautiful front porch.
Is this the River House?
No, this is this one. I call it Enchanted Cottage.
Okay.
But it was located right across from the little boat slip area at Shepherd's Park.
Okay.
And so I did the same thing. I approached the gentleman, and he agreed to allow me to relocate it. And in the back of the Lyons house, Dr. Conley had put this little playground. It was like a cool old swing set, but that's all that was there. And I was like, wow, it's kind of, I don't know, I want to say wasted space, but it could be used better. So I relocated the swing set to behind the 38 Seminole House, mm-hmm. and I moved this cottage to this area behind the Lyons house. And it's a great little cottage. So now what's back there really is almost like the Lyons house now almost has like a compound that has 4 buildings. It's the Ernest Lyons house. It's the Clifton Guest and Fishing Lodge that I moved there along the river. It's what I call the Enchanted Cottage, which I moved along the road. And what I call the Oasis Suite, which is the building that fronts Osceola Street, and it all surrounds this beautiful pool. So people, a lot of families like to rent them all to have their family reunion there. It's kind of a little hidden gem. People don't even know what's back there. So then after that, I got involved with the Owl House property, and I rented that because at the time that property was, it was difficult for somebody to make it work, because you can only do so much with it, as a long-term rental. There's two buildings. There's the orthodontics office on the corner of Colorado and Seminole, and then there's the house that was built in 1904. And as you know, the house is called the Owl House because it's very unique, the architecture with the inverted roof.
What was behind that? Why?
Well, it was built.
It doesn't snow here, right? So why do you have such sharp?
It was built by a ship captain, so I like to think he got the idea from the bottom of a ship. But I think I heard that it was to channel hurricane. The idea was to channel hurricane winds with it being right there on the river. And well, if that was the idea, it worked because it's been standing. It's been standing since 1904. It's really unique. If you go inside that house, there's it has all this beautiful paneling. And when you're looking at even in the closets, you'll open up the closets, you can see that that inverted roof line, and it's all covered with this gorgeous paneling. Right. Has the old Dade County pine. So I decided, you know what, this is a tough one because I don't know if I can make it work. So I said, let me do a rental on it with an option to purchase, and I'll see if I can make it work. So I rented it, I tried it out, and then I purchased it, and then I did a renovation to it. There was a garage, and I took the garage and I converted it into 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Okay. So it's now a 5-bedroom home. And it also works great for, like, as I said, family reunions or people, a local person just who turned 90, just had their 90th birthday party, and they had their, relatives come in and they rented the house for for a long weekend. So it worked well for things like that. And I still rent out to the dentist. So, but it's a tough one. That property is what's happened now is the condos that have been built that are, very expensive, beautiful condos, on both sides of Seminole. You've got Sailfish Cove on one side, and then you have the River House on the other side. And because of the value of those properties, the tax rates have gone up on these properties a lot. So it's kind of, that particular all of them, it's like, how do you make it work where you can pay for the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep of these historic properties?
Is there some sort of help or hedge with the fact that they're historic? Is there some way to register them or work? I should know this being in the city.
There's not right now. There may be.
In other places, is there? Is this something that you've seen somewhere else that we can cultivate in the city? Yeah,
there is something that the city tried to do. I remember several years ago. I have to look into it. But right now, there's no, I'm just paying, they keep raising them, and I'll call up the property appraiser and say, hey,
can you just go past us this time?
So but they have to do what they have to do. The flip side is the properties are very valuable.
Yeah, but I don't ever want you to sell them.
Well, I don't want to either.
Or your kids. You guys have to have this conversation, right? We're never selling these. Please keep them.
Well, what I want to tell you what my plan is. Right now, it became, I was originally doing a lot of the work myself, and now we have a larger staff. My wife became very instrumental because as the kids got a little older and went off to college, she had more time. So it's really a family business. I mean, not only, my wife, my son's involved. I told you about my father and my parents and how they were instrumental in all of this. So we want to keep it as a family business now. And my son, Christopher, who just graduated from college and just got married, he lives in Palm City. He is now working there full time, and I'm training him to become the manager. So
good.
He's our our goal is to keep it as a family business and try to maintain.
I want your goal to
what
be
we've
to
built.
continue to acquire more of these properties and preserve them.
Well, it's interesting you said that because I did try to do some other things. Like there was right before COVID hit, another situation. Somebody calls me and said, "There's this house in Sewell's Point that is like the last great estate, almost, but the last great old estate in Sewell's Point. It's called White Gate, and it was actually constructed for General MacArthur was going to move into it. You know how we have MacArthur Boulevard?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this thing was absolutely amazing. When I went to go look at it, you couldn't believe the inside, the old woodwork and the paneling and just the layout. It was absolutely outrageous. So I had this crazy idea that I was going to move it and put it right on the river in that very large piece of property behind the Owl House. And then I'd make a courtyard in between the two for the Owl House to look out to. And I started the whole process of negotiating with the owners, and we actually entered into a contract that would allow me to move the property and do all the work. And I started meeting with this. There was all sorts of issues about, there were some mangroves in the back that were going to have to be trimmed in order to get the thing onto a barge. And I had to start dealing with DEP, and it was very, very complicated.
Yes.
And we were going to have to replant some mangroves on the property or do it somewhere else. So I actually approached the city about that. Hey, can we take, I have to trim a mangrove to make this happen.
What year was this?
This is right before COVID, so about 4 years ago.
19.
Yeah. And then actually, to tell you the truth, the city really wasn't as helpful. They could have been more helpful, I thought.
Well, I'm here now, so.
They were like, no, we just can't do it. But sometimes you got to be creative to make things happen, because it really could have been amazing to have this White Gate house on the river in downtown Stewart. It would have been absolutely amazing. Well, long story short, what happened after doing all of this work and we practically ready to do it, COVID hit. So when COVID came and everything shut down, and it was so weird back then. I would go to downtown Stewart and there was no human beings. I would be the only person down there when everything was closed down. And I had nothing to do. Sometimes I'd jump in that pool, and then I'd go sit in one of the suites and look at the news, and the world was ending. Yeah. So I called up the attorney who represented the owners and said, I've got to cancel the contract. I just can't do it right now. It's just too uncertain. So I canceled the contract. And of course, I always look back on that. Maybe after everything took off again, I was like, wow, did I make a mistake? But unfortunately, in the interim, they sold the property and they knocked it down. The owners knocked it down.
Steven.
No. Well, I'll give you another similar story about that. Again, somebody calls me and says, there is a piece of property back in, what do we call that neighborhood? Old Potsdam? Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called? The
Potsdam, the triangle.
No. But back, the neighborhood back off of West Ocean. What do you call that? Is there a name to that neighborhood?
Potsdam. That's
Potsdam.
Yeah.
Well, Stewart used to historically be called Potsdam.
No, but the triangle. Joan Jefferson and that whole West Ocean.
No. I'm talking about where Lady Ann's Tea Room used to be. In that neighborhood.
Let me do some digging here.
Camden Boulevard, Camden Avenue. What do you call Potsdam? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody called me about Lady Ann's Tea Room and said somebody's going to buy this property. So I went over and looked at it, because now my head was spinning about, hey, I could take this. Well, I was going to put something behind the Owl House, and then I was like, maybe that's a good thing that I didn't do that, even because now the water view is open from the house, and the backyard is so beautiful. It's just a grand lawn. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I can move something smaller in between the dentist's office and the owl house. There's like this big piece of property that's kind of like a little garden. So my idea was, okay, let me go look at this Lady Ann's tea room, and I could slide it right in there. It'll be perfect. So I went to go look at it and went inside. I mean, have you ever been to Lady Ann's tea room? It was beautiful. I've eaten a couple of meals.
I've seen pictures maybe, but I've never been in there.
Same thing with the old Dade County pine, the charm, the old wainscoting and all of that. And so I started, talking to the house mover, the Brownie company about that. And what happened with that one is I don't know why he must be busy with, right now they're very busy with lifting up structures all throughout Florida
to raise them with FEMA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's super swamped with that. So he never really got back to me. And then after a time, I didn't want to hold these people up anymore. So I was like, I don't know whether I can do it, because this was going to be a little bit more tricky, because we were going to have to get it. We had the railroad arms. It had to come across some roads that were going to be a little tricky. And being able to maneuver it, even on the corner, it was going to have to come across this corner of this gentleman's house.
So you need a house moving company. You see what this is? You see how this all gets sorted out?
So long story short, I passed on it, but I went back by there about 3 weeks ago. I was just curious. It's gone. They knocked it down.
You see what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
need a house moving company. If that's a
and
bottleneck.
Just to let you know about, since we're talking about kind of, some of our discussion is about, the history of Stewart and, these
why it's important.
Preserving our heritage. Right. That Lady Ann's tea room, my understanding, was lived in by the first mayor of the city of Stewart.
Who was who? I don't even know who the first mayor was.
I can't remember his name, but and it's got a great history. That's part of our history, and it looked great, beautiful outside and inside, and a lot of people over the years, dined there and had wonderful experiences. It would have been so great to save it, but
yes.
But it's gone. It's gone forever.
Forever.
So one of the problems is that I'm seeing is with everybody wanting to come to Stewart, which I can understand. I came to Stewart.
Same.
My family came here. We're from New York, but it's
Miami.
such a beautiful area. But some of the things that are attracting people to Stewart are, obviously, we know about the water. We have these amazing rivers and waterways, and historically, sailfish capital of the world, and most biodiverse lagoon in the country, and that's what's attracting people here. In addition to our what I'll call Florida charm, our old Florida charm, where it's not quite as built up as the rest of Florida. And there's a couple of things that have helped us with that. We've got the 4-story height limit in Martin County, right? We've also got the highway, both 95 and the Turnpike.
Being pushed out.
We're further west, okay? Whereas if you go down to, Fort Lauderdale or whatnot, it's right near the coast. So
thank you, Maggie.
Yes. Then we've got this great downtown. I mean, this downtown Stewart is a gem, and it's being recognized all over the country as one of the greatest towns. I just put an article on my Facebook page that somebody, I think Eula Clark, had put this article about it being recognized as one of the 7. There's been loads of them just over the past 5 years. And they talked about the old Colorado wind and that. So I had to share. I was like,
you should.
Thank you to World Atlas for highlighting the old Colorado wind in downtown. You
should be proud of it. Yeah.
So anyway, people are coming here, and they're going to keep coming here. So the question is, and we know why they're coming here, because South Florida is built out, right? People are coming to Port St. Lucie, which is actually the second fastest growing city in the United States, isn't it?
It has to be.
I believe it is.
If it's not number 1, it's number 2 or 3.
Because it's a little less expensive there. There's a lot of development that's not quite as regulated. But people really want to come to Stewart because of the charm. and because of our water. So how do we balance this? That's the question. So, and it has to be done wisely. I mean, it's good, you need to have housing for, we have a serious problem right now with people not being able to afford, there's not affordable housing. So there does need to be development, but we have to do it in such a way that we don't destroy the historic charm. So how do we accomplish that? And that's something. It's going to take a lot of people and a lot of planning.
You had quoted Jeff Krosskoff, which I thought was perfect. Don't kill the golden goose.
Jeff Krosskoff. He was the
everything.
He was
mayor,
he was a mayor,
yeah.
commissioner for like 25 years.
But you quoted him and said, "You don't kill the golden goose. It's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Maximize on what this place is, but don't kill the thing that makes it special."
Exactly. So
don't kill the value proposition.
So
here.
one of the problems we have, just to tell you from my experience in dealing with some of these things and being a real estate attorney. For example, the Clifton Guest and Fishing Lodge. When I wanted to move that house onto that lot, I wanted to set it back if you were building a normal single family structure, you would want to set it back off the street a little bit, have your driveway in the front, right? Some nice landscaping in the front, right? Do you know that I had to get a special I had to go in front of the commission.
Get a variance.
To get a variance, because right now, the way the zoning regulations are set up, it's all encouraging
the front.
Zero lot line in the front, and almost barely anything on the sides, to have these large buildings like
that's the modern
like
thing
you would
now,
find in City Place. Okay,
right, exactly.
So the way that it's all set up right now, it's all going to eventually become that, unless we think about things a little bit more wisely.
That's the modern urban design, is building up front parking and everything else in the back.
Yeah, and it works in some places, and maybe we do need that in some places. But the problem is this historic downtown area is so small. I mean, we're talking about Colorado Avenue from US 1 down to the river, right? We're talking about Osceola Street from, is that Second? Or from about, Osceola Street, we're really talking about all the way down to the, to the end, where the park is, all the way up to, the area right before the hospital. I mean, to me, that's like the heart of downtown.
The core.
So how do we maintain that so that it has that historic charm? Because it's also helping, the rest of the county too, because people that are living out in these beautiful, country club communities and golf course communities, and even the areas on the river,
they want to come downtown.
Yeah, it's essential to have this charming downtown. So how do we accomplish? I'm trying to do my part by.
I need you to do more.
Doing what I'm doing.
Because I don't see anybody else really doing it. Trying to encourage you today. Keep buying them. Dyer's Dry Goods, all these little buildings like that could keep their same charm but just be renovated. That's what I would love to see more of, man. I feel like that, because the city's always going to do what the city's going to do. The city's going to approve projects that, developers bring in. The city can never function as truly historic preservation, because developers are never going to come in with projects around historic preservation.
Right.
It's got to be that guy who's hell-bent on keeping this place special.
Yeah.
And is actively seeking or, but having projects be brought to them.
There are things they can do, though. I mean, there's things that they have done. The city's done a great job with a lot of things. Like, this Creek District. I'm not too familiar with it, but we
redid the form-based code for Creek and East Stewart.
Right.
With certain parameters for development, but
But then along the road there, that whole project with the artwork and the fountains, I mean, to me, that was really smart.
Beautiful, yeah.
Gorgeous. It's pedestrian friendly. That's another thing we're known as. We're very pedestrian friendly there in the downtown. People love to come stay with us because they can park their car and they don't have to get back in it.
But you know this. I'm going to tell you what you already know, okay? The goal of complete streeting an area, of investing the grant money into making it more walkable, is not to preserve the historic buildings and renovate them and make them beautiful.
Right.
It's to attract a developer into wanting to spend the money to put a 4-story box there that increases the property value
Right.
10x.
Right. Well, that's what you just said. So I think that's one thing that we need to. 4-story box. I mean, there's places where that is necessary. You know, on US 1.
Exactly.
US 1 is designed for that.
100%.
That's where we should have all that kind of development. But we don't want 4-story boxes really right in the heart of downtown
Colorado.
You know, I mean, I'll give you another example of how the city can. There are things that the city can do. I mean, it's a beautiful project, and I represented a few clients who purchased condos that I did the closings for them. The River House is called, right on Seminole Street. It's right across from my properties, from the Blue House, what I call the Blue House, the Ernest Lyons House, and the Clifton Guest and Fishing Lodge. It's about 20-something high-end units. And the property was actually owned prior to the developer purchasing it. I had a client who owned it. And I tried to help him get approval for some little, it was going to be 4 small Key West style duplexes that would have fit really the character of the street. They were only going to be 2 stories. And we went and we started talking to the development office, and they made it so difficult that the guy didn't do it. And he ended up selling it to the current owner. And the current owner put in, since they're very reputable builders from Miami, and so they took a Miami architecture and they put it there, and it's a very high class, beautiful building from the inside, but it doesn't really fit the character though of an historic downtown.
I would say no.
That's one of the issues, is that there's like everything. There's not like. You go to some towns like, for example, Franklin, Tennessee. I remember being at that town. This is close to Nashville. And they have something with their architectural designs that everything, it really fits a certain character. There's a certain type of brick they use. There's certain elements that use it in the architecture. And it seems like we're kind of missing. It's just kind of mishmash and down. It's like everything's different, and there's not really a uniform plan, in my opinion.
The excuse you'll hear is that the state of Florida does not allow you to impose architectural standards on developers, for property right consideration, right? You can't make them make a certain look exactly, or because it can be encumbering them financially. But all of these projects, for the most part, that come in are coming in front of the commission. Very few are by right anymore. So
right, yeah, that's the key. If somebody's asking for an exception,
force them to do it, but you can say no to the projects that don't. If there is a sort of unified vision across the commission of what the vision for the look and feel of downtown Stewart is,
sure,
which there isn't always necessarily that unified vision. So it can be sort of like, okay, developer brings in project. Yes.
No, you're right. And it's important. Property rights are very important.
Yes.
People have their rights, and the government, shouldn't be allowed to overreach and interfering with that. But at the same time, if somebody's coming in for a special exception, then, there's got to be some room for negotiation.
And two, you'll see a wide variety in what ultimately gets built when it's somebody who lives around here or cares. Like if you were going to even build something new, I'm sure it would mirror a lot of those, architectural looks and gables and things that John Layton's a good example. If you see John Layton build something, it looks like old Stewart,
Sure.
What he built on Ocean, those that character and feeling because he lives here. And
Yeah,
he's
he
a
did a
couple
very nice
streets
job with
over
that.
where he lives,
Absolutely.
right? Like there's an appreciation for wanting this place to be carrying
Right.
it. It's not just, somebody from Miami, or now it seems like international money coming in to develop that just is looking at an Excel spreadsheet and units and, how to make that work. And,
Right.
their guy who builds it is out of Miami, and that's what he's used to building. And we're just going to do a smaller scale version of it here.
Sure. But I think there are things that can be done. For example, the City Hall property.
Yeah. What would be your
The
vision
City
on
Hall
that?
property? I mean, my understanding is they're going to move City Hall to the Wachovia Bank building at some point.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
So progressively, we're moving to Wells.
Okay.
But what would
So-
you do with that
So
property?
if it were me, I mean, what I would do with that property right now, the beauty of it is people are utilizing it
Mhm.
on Sundays as almost like a little park there on the side where they
Yes.
watch the good thing the city did, put in those sails over the.
Mhm.
It's great. And they have little shows and whatnot. People love. It's almost like a little park, even though it's City Hall, right? So what I think, I travel periodically to North Carolina in the summer times to get out of the heat, and there's this place called Cashiers, North Carolina, that's close to it's close to Lake Glenville, and beautiful area. They have the most amazing park there that the town puts so much time and money and effort into, and it's so amazing the way it's laid out, the landscaping, the architecture. They have pavilions, they have concerts. It's absolutely incredible. The park for the children has architectural features. So my vision would be take City Hall, right? And the city has invested in properties, which they probably, I don't know if that's really the role of government. They keep purchasing, like the building that they're leasing out to, I haven't been there yet. It's now called the Waterfront.
Mhm.
The city purchased that property. And
That was a whole.
I
that
think
was a whole thing.
I can understand that. Okay, yes, completing that circle of ownership. I understand that. But so, is it true that they if you go from the tip of Flagler Park, right, all the way up to City Hall, does the city own all of that property?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay, so my vision would be that whole property, include existing Flagler Park, right?
Mhm.
All the way up to, I believe is it 2nd Street?
Yes. I
Where
don't know.
the City Hall parking lot
Right.
right across from Spritz.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. What street
I
is
don't even
that?
know.
I don't either. It's the
It's kind
street
of sad that I don't know the street. I think it's
that
2nd Street.
Osceola dead ends into. That's all I
it's
think
2nd
of it
Street,
as.
but
Yeah.
that entire parcel, instead of, I've heard talk about, let's extend the road of Osceola, let's put in more buildings and stores. And,
Which I think is less
yeah.
likely to happen now that Brightline is not going to be there.
Right.
In their RFP, they said they don't want to be there.
I think that if they do that, I went up to Fort Pierce recently, and I looked at the development they put there around the courthouse,
Mhm.
and it's all 4-story buildings. But you know what? They did a nice job. They spent a lot of money, but it's not charming. You can't recreate. You can't recreate the workmanship and the materials in some of these historic properties.
Mhm.
If you do it new, it's never going to look.
No.
I mean, as good as it could if it was just maintained, a historic structure maintained properly.
Mhm.
So, and if we build more buildings there, it's going to be congested, and it's going to compete with the stores and the businesses that already are on Osceola Street.
Mhm.
I say make that thing the best park
I agree.
in America. The most amazing waterfront downtown park. I mean, it could be incredible. I went to a couple of summers ago to this town on the river. I don't even know where we were. South Carolina, Beaufort. One is called Beaufort. One's called Beaufort. These two towns. I like to. I do it like the song. You say tomato, I say tomato. I say Buford, you say Beaufort. I don't know which one it is, but I was at this town, either Beaufort or Beaufort. They have this park on the water that is outstanding, that makes the whole town. That's what we should do, and it should be world class.
Beaufort.
Beaufort.
I'm getting a Beaufort here. Yeah. You were close. You're not wrong. Yeah, there you go. All right, you got that kind of a thing.
Let me see. Yes. I mean, they have festivals there. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely amazing. So that's my opinion on that. But how do you accomplish? I mean, right now,
the resistance you're going to get is money, right? So they're going to say, "Oh, you're taking it off the tax rolls and yada yada, and parks cost money." But yeah,
see,
I mean,
the thinking on that has to be this: that the downtown is the heart, right, of the rest of Stewart and even Martin County, right? So
it's the seat,
right? If we keep that, as the attraction, the properties around are going to keep their value and increase their value. But if we take that and we make it like the rest of South Florida, now all of a sudden Stewart's not as special. Maybe property values aren't going to. That's the way.
It's a harder pitch because how do you really measure that, right? How do you measure specialness and sort of the Central Park argument, right? What makes those really valuable properties around Central Park so valuable is Central Park, even though Central Park itself doesn't have the intrinsic value because nothing's built on it. It's not bringing in ad valorem. It's costing money, but it does raise the property values of what's around it because of its uniqueness.
Think about the city. I mean, yes, I was almost criticizing them for purchasing, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they did the right thing because they've assembled this great piece right on the river in the heart of downtown, right? It's so key. What are we going to do with that? It could be amazing. I mean, right now, if you go to Flagler Park, it's just not. I mean, I know people try and they've done some things, but I have to tell. I was walking. There's like that nice little path that you can walk
in between.
And then
Flagler Center
I was like, okay, somebody spent money on putting these signs up that are talking about doing things with your child. It was the weirdest thing. I was with my son, and it was like, okay, now look at the sign says, look at the tree and the shapes in the tree and discuss that with your child. I'm like, what is this? It was so weird.
So give me your vision. What does a vision look like?
It's one of those. Okay, here my vision is.
Yeah.
My vision is, okay, some type of area where there could be, I don't know whether it's an open grassy area or with some type of concert venue with beautiful architecture, where it's covered, part of it's covered, and then other beautiful little maybe pavilions or beautiful landscaping. Yes, a design to it that it's just these two parks are perfect examples. Cashiers, the park in Cashiers, and the park in, is it Beaufort you said?
Or Beaufort? Henry C. Chambers Waterfront Park in Beaufort, South Carolina.
Yep. So, look at what they did there. Can we do something similar? It's absolutely amazing.
I like
what they've got there. I mean, along the river, okay, they have these beautiful, benches that are just they're rocking benches that. And
they've captured their historic.
You sit on these benches and you're looking at the river and they're sturdy and
they've captured their historic buildings too, right? So they've got yeah.
Oh yeah. That would be my vision. I think it would make Stewart if we did something like that, as opposed to Okay, we build another street.
They talked about a hotel
Yeah,
or
we could
commercial
put a-
on both
yep.
sides of Osceola extending up to waterfront type thing.
At one point, I don't know if you remember, there was a developer that was going to come and put condos on it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, somebody got involved and stopped that. So that's my opinion about the park.
I love it. We're on the same page.
Yeah, so I mean,
that's why I want to have these conversations.
Talking about the hotel, you just mentioned that they're thinking about doing a hotel.
I don't think anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, but they
you're talking about
right now. There's plans for a hotel on Colorado Avenue in downtown Stewart. So
what do you think about that?
Well, nobody. It's interesting. I'm
gonna pull it up.
I didn't know about it. I was like, I can't believe nobody in the city of Stewart came and I own the only boutique hotel and associated vacation rental houses in the heart of downtown. How come nobody asked me my opinion? But I found out about it and I looked on and I couldn't believe when I saw it. I was like, we're going to put in a 4-story cookie cutter hotel that should be on US 1 in the heart of downtown. That's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So I don't know. It is America, and part of America is competition. But at the same time, I have to tell you honestly, I am worried that if that hotel gets built right there, I don't know if I could compete with it, because they're talking about they're talking about over 100 rooms. Over 100 rooms. And the difference is right now I can compete with the hotels on US 1 because
you're downtown.
I have the location that people want to be at where they can have that pedestrian friendly experience right outside their door in this historic, charming area, right?
While you're talking, I'm pulling up that project so people can see it.
The problem I have is, even though I believe, if they have the right to build that, so be it. But I think they have to get an exception.
So I'll give you a little bit of that. So if Ted Glassrud didn't sell it and he held on to it and wanted to build it there, then he could, without commission approval, leverage the parking garage that exists there to park it. But because it's going to a separate owner, right, Raj Patel, he has to have commission approval to be giving the ability to use that parking for that spot, because on its own you could not have the hotel proposed sit there because there's no parking.
Right.
So you have to have the parking garage to do it.
Right.
So you have to have commission approval.
Sure.
Yeah. So that said, and I'll go into what I told him a year ago. Make it a boutique hotel. It's Colorado. Nobody wants a 4-story hotel on Colorado. If you look all down Colorado, it's 1, 2-story. Maybe you could get away with 3 if you didn't make it, 40-foot 3.
Right.
But it more than even the height is like the look, the feel. You want to land on Colorado. That's the entrance into Colorado. That's the artery into downtown from US 1. You want a building there that characterizes, if it's going to be new and we're going to go through all this with building it there, make it, when you land on Colorado and see that, go, wow. It adds to, it characterizes the feel. And, the criticism for that is if I, and not directly from him, I'm just saying when I've talked to people about that, it's too much money. You're talking about, $300 a night and yada, yada. It's Colorado, man. That is, go out on US 1. If you're talking about $100, a night or whatever for the big, box hotel.
Well, they do.
Downtown and on Colorado, that is a boutique. And that is the response that post I put up, just asking. I tried not to lead too much and say anything negative about it. Just what are your thoughts? I think I counted something like 240 comments. Some of them were mine, responding back, but easily 200 plus comments of people saying exactly that same thing.
Right. It's just not the right.
Hilton and Marriott have boutique hotels, even if it has to stay within that chain, because that's how you operate. You have boutique hotel models within their franchises.
Right.
It's just making the choice financially that that's not the product that you want to put in that spot because you don't feel like it'll work or whatever. But that's downtown. If you're going to put in my opinion, if you're going to do that on Colorado, it's got to feel like Colorado.
Right.
Otherwise, you're adding a different feeling. And I'll pull it up so people can see while we're talking.
I just can't believe that we would have gone through this whole process with this Creek zoning district and all the artwork we talked about.
And
just
one
to
more
put
thing
a cookie cutter box.
It is literally, there is a line that we have for what's called the formula businesses, right? That's where you get the franchises. There is a line, a distinct line that is Fraser Creek. It is the parcel that touches that line. It does technically sit outside of it, or the project couldn't even be considered because it's a formula business, but it is touching the line. There should be some sense of respect for what you're saying, that unique, formula.
Well, what I'm saying also is that there has to be consideration for how does it affect other people. So some people are going to say, okay, it's going to bring more people down that are going to support businesses.
Sure.
So that is a good argument, right? But the flip side is, how does it affect our ambiance, and this historic charm, or this old Florida charm that we're trying to, maintain, and how does it affect somebody like me? Mm-hmm. So the problem the problem I have is that right now it worked. The way I have these set up with this small boutique hotel, it has 15 rooms, and I've got the historic houses and cottages, right? I can make it work where I can keep it the way it is without having to, knock them down and
don't even talk like that. Stop it.
Build structures that can. No, well, I mean, you could do a lot. I mean, a lot can be from an economic perspective. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing really may not make sense from an economic perspective. Okay, but the problem is that if I can't make it work, what am I going to do? I would hate to have to sell the properties.
Stop it.
Because then, then it's somebody's going to come in and they're going to want to get the biggest bang for their buck.
I'm going to toggle back and forth here, right?
So that's what I'm saying is you have to give consideration to how it's going to affect other people in Stewart. But listen, my hope, Chris, is that if it is built, that I can still compete with it, because they're going to be cookie cutter, right?
Yeah, and then we'll go
they're going to be a little bit longer of a walk, even though the tram will come right up there.
What's a room?
I'm right in the heart of downtown, and I've got historic charm.
What's a room night cost at Colorado?
At Colorado, it's ranging anywhere from, like, right now it's you can rent a room right now, a queen room that has a little kitchenette, has a beautiful bathroom, has a living room, bedroom with a queen bed. Mm-hmm. You can rent it on the weekdays for $179. You can, then we've got things in the 200s. I
feel like that's so cheap, though.
Yeah, you got things in the 200s.
So what would you have to kick up your prices, and maybe you feel like the market's not going to be there for the higher price?
No, the problem is with a true Hilton, mm-hmm. okay, that if they have 100 rooms, right, they're going to be able to they can easily take 1/3 of those rooms, right, and just drop the price so much that people will say, hey, why would I spend this money I'd rather save the money. That's how the mindset of people, even though we do offer, something completely different. We have suites that have wood floors, and they're charming and they're unique, and we're right in the heart of downtown, 100 feet from the river, mm-hmm. from the boardwalk. There's always that economic factor. That's what, for having such a large hotel, it's hard. How do you compete with that? So, they're a big $1 billion corporation. And one of the things is this downtown area where I'm located is there's a prohibition against chains.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna punish the people that are trying to do the right thing, trying to maintain the character, and then right on the cusp of the boundary,
Yep.
we're gonna allow this $1 billion corporation to come in. And how is that competition going to affect these other businesses? That's all I'm saying. But if it does happen, I still hope I can compete with it, but I just don't know.
My hope is
I
that
don't know. I can't look into a crystal ball.
I've brought enough awareness to it because it was kind of happening pretty low key. But I've brought enough awareness to it that people are genuinely upset. The average person who lives here is of the same vein as you. They feel like how you feel. And we're very vocal in it's a Facebook post, but people are, anybody who's got the barometer out is taking that in. And, hopefully there's been enough awareness brought to it that either a boutique hotel comes back or, we'll see. But if it does come in front of me, I'm going to, make people as aware of it as possible so that they can be there to express that in person if they need to, not to get in Raj's way or hurt him, but financially. But listen, this is how people feel here. And my job is to represent them and how they feel. I don't work for you, Raj. I don't want to work against you, but this is how everybody feels who lives here. And, my vote is the one that's going to allow this to happen or not. So, but I would say overwhelmingly more than a bright line conversation, more than, a lot of other contentious issues. I've never had people so uniformly say, no.
Sure.
That's
sure.
Boutique, please.
Sure.
That's of 200 plus comments, all but Eric Wickstrom at Terra, were a no.
But they did receive a letter of support from.
That was very curious, and I'm going to get
Stewart Main Street and from the Creek District.
I'm going to get to the bottom of that. So I reached out to Creek District to say, who is this exactly? And I didn't get anything back. But if it does come in front of me and that's brought up, my questions would be, who did you talk to? Because Kara, Jean, who owns Fruits and Roots, didn't realize that was going to eat into her parking. She wasn't going to have that auxiliary parking anymore.
Right. Well, not only that,
the neighbor didn't know. So who does Creek even represent? And who did Raj even talk to if you didn't talk to your neighbor?
I haven't looked at the
Don't
plans.
tell me you support it if none of the people that are around you didn't even know about it.
Sure. I haven't looked at the plans, Chris, but I did walk by and
it's a retention pond.
Well, that's the one thing I don't understand. Like, because I do real estate law and I've been involved in, helping people get developments approved. And part of it always is if you're near the river, you need to have these retention areas where the water drains into that, and then that goes, sifts through the ground as opposed to going right into the creek or right into the river. That was the problem with Florida development, for the past,
Ever?
only within the past 25 years did they start requiring that. So I don't know why that. I assume that's why that drainage area is there, but what happens now when you put a hotel there, and how does that going to affect?
On the creek.
Yeah, it's all going to go into the creek, which is going to go into the river.
We talked about this a little bit before we hit the record button. Across the street from me, there is this, 4-story commercial building that's half a story higher on its grade for the first story, and the water sheets off of that parking lot and now floods my building here that we're sitting in. But there's this maybe too much faith put in modern engineering with drainage, stormwater drainage, and my line is always going to be that trees drain a lot better than a baffle box. I don't care how smart we are, you can't beat nature.
Right.
So when you just have concrete next to concrete next to concrete, even if it's pervious, even if you got, even if the entire building has baffle boxes below it, it's not going to do what green space does, especially if it's got roots in it. It's not going to function like a retention pond.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
even in downtown Stewart, there's areas on like Osceola Street where down further, closer to downtown, when we get rain events, it's that whole street's getting, you know, blocked up with
And
water. It's
that's
like
the
a
difference,
river.
right? It's
Yeah.
not the average rain that's going to happen, or even a heavy rain. It's the freak events that always happen.
Yeah.
You have to bet on that, and if you have that concrete, even if it's pervious, it's just going to sheet across, and if it doesn't have somewhere to go, you're going to flood. So if you cover everything in concrete, like how Fort Lauderdale flooded out, when you get those freak events, you have to be thinking, and I'm not an engineer, I'm not a stormwater engineer, but just common sense, man. Like,
Sure.
you want green space, you want trees, you don't want. I think it was Merritt Matheson who I heard say recently it was, our number one crop that we grow is concrete in Florida. Not sugar, it's concrete. So if we're not having common sense long term for that, it's not good.
Sure. I agree. So you were you just mentioned Brightline. What are your thoughts?
Man, that is such a mixed bag, right? You have, from an economic standpoint, if I put a station in downtown Stewart, if it does what other places have done in terms of property value, you're going to kick up everybody's property values within a mile. Your hotels are going to, your property values are going to go up for your hotels and your buildings. Everybody's going to win that owns property. The contentious part is beyond the financial blessing. The average person who lives here, how do they feel about it? And that's where it's a mixed bag. When I talk to people, I'll hear, if it's going to come through anyway, we'd love to have a station. That's a very common response, right? But then there's a lot of people who see it as a direct threat to that small town charm. You put that station here and it's going to put pressure all around. With that increase in property values, it's going to put pressure around all of the properties that are either vacant or, I'll give you some specifics, right? Like you have the lumber yard. And I don't know, the proposal from Treasure Coast Regional Planning hasn't come out yet, so I can't speak for sure if it's Fairgrounds or the site downtown. But if it's in downtown over here, you have the lumber yard and Robert Ernston Produce that would sort of straddle where that station's going to go in the corresponding garage. That's going to put pressure on Robert Ernston to sell, right? Because he's going to make a bucket of money and he could go somewhere else and net, and the lumber yard. What does that turn into? Well, it's going to end up being some kind of 4-story whatever, all around that area, right? All of those properties, including East Stewart now, there's pressure to develop. And that pressure of further urbanizing the city is a direct threat for a lot of people for losing that small town charm. Again, there's more pressure on you to sell your property so that they can become some 3 or 4 story thing, right? And if you were focused just on the money, or your kids were and you were out of the picture, right? That's the threat, is with the increase in property values, which is a blessing. Nobody's gonna buy that very expensive piece of dirt and build a Stewart Heritage Museum,
Right?
Or a river house, or why would you do that?
Right.
It's a mixed bag. It's not straightforward for me.
My opinion on the train station is, first of all, historically, we have the Flagler Railroad.
100%.
Right. I have one of my suites I call the Flagler Suite because our town wouldn't be here without that.
True.
And part of me really wants to get on, if there is a station there. I just love the idea of being able to go there, get on it, and go up to Orlando, go down to see a show in Fort Lauderdale by train. It's just something that
it's like Europe,
intriguing.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've been to Rome,
Exactly.
Hop on the train.
And I think that I've always been. I have to tell you, I've always been. Everybody was up in arms about this years ago, and I could never understand what the opposition was because I knew it was going to come because if coming from we're talking from between Miami and Orlando,
It's coming.
The powers that be
coming.
wanted this. I always knew it was going to come. There was no way it could be stopped. The guy who used to be the president of the company, his name was Rusty. He used to come stay at my hotel and I would talk to him about it, and he loved Stewart, and he kind of gave me the feeling that he wanted the station really to come here, and I thought it would be great because I said, you know what, you're gonna have to have transportation at your other locations, like in Orlando. You got to transport people from the train when they get off of it to wherever they're going. But wouldn't it be great if somebody coming from, Miami up to Orlando knew that they could, if they got off if it was in downtown Stewart, they could just walk to the downtown. So,
or stay in Colorado for a night or two and go back.
So I was always of the mindset that if it's going to come by and we're going to have to deal with it, why not have a benefit?
Sure.
So I think that if it is going to come, if it could be done in such a way that we could tie it into the historic, there used to be a train station, and we have photos of it, what it looked like. Is there a way that we could, incorporate somehow some of the historic elements to tie it into this historic downtown?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a way that we could, make it a win-win.
Well, since we're paying for at least half of it, I'm sure we'll have some sort of say in what it looks like, I'd hope. That's if I had to say what my issues would be, I want to see what the deal that's being worked out with Treasure Coast Regional, what their proposal is, right? So when that proposal that was supposed to land today at the county, but they've postponed it, and I'm sure they want the city to have first crack at it to see if, we pick it apart and if it's even, so that'll hit us on the 12th. That's going to be in front of us. But that proposal is going to talk about who's paying for what. And my concern is, and I'll give you a little bit of my behind the scenes, I don't think it's going in the fairgrounds for their recommendation because Brightline wants it totally paid for. And the county's not going to pay whatever it's going to cost, $20 million or $30 million for a garage and a station. So they need the city from a financial standpoint because they'd string those guys up if the county was wholly responsible. And Brightline's not going to, from what I've heard, with how much Fort Pierce is offering, Brightline has zero desire to pay for any part of that station. So you need the city. So my thought is it's going to be over by the courthouse parking lot, but
right.
I want to see what that deal looks like. And I want to know, what are we expecting the city to be on the hook for? And when I look at that proposal, that's what I'm curious about is from a financial standpoint, because city residents are also county residents, so they're going to be paying for that half. So what are you truly expecting city residents to be on the hook for to get a station here? And at what there is a tangible value to having that station that could be measured, right? Like within a mile, this is the change in the TIF revenue that's going to come in. But there's a threshold for where it's not a good deal anymore. And how much is that, over what time frame? That's kind of the stuff I want to see is it truly a good business proposition for the people who live here? And how much are they going to be on the hook for? More than the more macro, lines that most people say, which is if it's going to stop here anyway, we should, or if it's going to come through, we should get a stop anyway kind of thing, or financially, how much is it going to cost? Because everything's through the roof expensive right now.
Right.
So if you build a parking garage, how much is that? $20 million? I want to see that kind of stuff.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that, that may be a benefit also to people that live here right now that aren't even thinking about getting on a train. They don't want to deal with riding a train. They just want to drive their car wherever they're going. But when they come to downtown Stewart in February, if there's now a parking garage that a tram comes up to, right?
True.
People can get in that. There's a lot of people, not only in downtown Stewart, but all throughout the county, that when they're coming, it may help the lifestyle of people that live here, and being able to patronize downtown more through that parking garage.
And too, you could, let's say you wanted to go travel, right? You could, I guess you'd probably get a ride to Brightline, but if you wanted to, or somebody was coming from Port St. Lucie, they could park their car there and then go to Rome, for a couple of weeks and then come back. And they never had to park at an airport. Yeah. They just were able to be at that garage kind of thing.
My opinion on this whole thing with the train station is, yes, I do have, I know it'll help my hotel.
Of course.
Yes. But even aside from that.
It's good though.
Aside from that.
I want you to have more money so you can buy more.
I really am interested in, I would love to see us do it in a way that we can continue our, showing off our historic heritage, which we historically had a train station there. Okay. And then the development around it, as you're saying, just like this issue with this hotel on the creek and what's going to go on the Creek District.
Right.
It's just everything we do has to be, we've got to do it right.
Yes.
We've got to start thinking everything we do has to be done right. Okay. And that, a lot of that is, we see with our eyes. We see, what does it look like? And a lot of it is just aesthetics and the, for example, I happen to like this, and this, I think the city, and I don't know what the name of the developer was. I thought they did a very nice job on that it used to be called the Triangle property.
Azul.
To me, the little porches, the landscaping they did there, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it served the purpose, which is there was a need for more housing, and the place does well renting them out. It serves a need, and it looks good. In my opinion, it looks good.
You didn't like the wine bar and the triangle.
But I think I
peak
think,
use there.
I didn't patronize that place.
No.
But I think that if we do it right, everything we do has to be done right.
Because it's going to be there for 50 or 100 years or whatever it is, right? So if you're going to be looking at it for a long time, and your kids and grandkids will.
Yeah. And there's so many people.
Put the energy into making it pretty.
So many people are going to be coming here. There's going to be so much redevelopment of the area, okay, where they're going to go up to the 4 stories.
I hope
okay?
not.
But no, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's happening. There's no way to stop it. The people are coming. Okay, so the question is, in this vicinity, what do we do? It's kind of like you go up to St. Augustine. They have regulations. There's certain places where they allow big box buildings, but right in that heart there, no, they've kind of preserved it in a certain way, but it has to be done right. And it's got to be done in a way that people can actually make it work. It's economically, how do you encourage people to maintain these properties and keep them at the lower level of,
how does St. Augustine do it?
I don't know. We got to look into that.
Yeah.
Well, one difference is that they're like a tourism mecca,
I think that's a future for Stewart, right? If you look at the county. So I sit on the Tourism Development Council.
Yeah,
it's
I used
one
to
of
sit
the
on that.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
So their purpose, their function is to drive heads and beds for tourism, right? There can be a lot of complaints about overdeveloping and too many people living in Stewart, but from a financial standpoint, you should want heads and beds. You should want people visiting and then going home, right? And spending their money here. Tourism is sort of the next, it's been our history, but I think there's going to be more and more energy getting put into that because they're really developing out the ecotourism side. So the parks, the beaches, but also sort of taking your day and you're going to the beach or you're going to the parks, and then you're coming downtown and you're enjoying the charming downtown. And maximizing those assets for the tourism, like you're saying, the parks, the open spaces, the green spaces, renovating buildings and having them be hotel space. And I do think that's a future as well. But a big part of that is keeping the charm and the beauty and not big boxing everything to where it doesn't feel as appealing. You can put all the tourism development money you want into an area, but if it doesn't feel charming, then people will go to St. Augustine or somewhere else. You can't make that happen no matter what, money you put into it. You've killed the golden goose.
Exactly.
So you're just going to continue to, I keep hammering this, buy more properties and make them nice.
I hope so.
Good.
I hope so. I really enjoy. I enjoy.
Mike Braid is doing it too, right?
Mike Braid. Yeah, he owns a lot of
St. Matthews or whatever that is. That building.
Yeah, he has a little. It's kind of like a little B&B. And that's all in the old Pops.
Back when I was a single guy renting, I looked in there and
it's curious. Great. Yeah. Mike has done wonderful things with his buildings in downtown Stoughton. In fact, the main hotel building, he did the original renovation to that. So he did a lot of the heavy lifting for me in that building, and I had to do a lot of the little touches, like flooring and ceilings, making things look good. The tiles and the countertops and all that stuff.
Do you find that there is anything in your way? I know you mentioned briefly the setbacks or, current design standards. Do you feel like the city's in your way or the state's in your way in terms of redeveloping? They're probably not helping you very much, but are they making it harder?
No, I don't think they're making it harder
to redevelop these buildings and bring them new use.
The city's been generally cooperative. I think that they could have been more helpful with that one property I was trying to do. I was telling you about the white gate.
Yep.
I really don't think. I think they should have been rolling out the red carpet for that, and maybe would have helped me, make a different decision.
At that time, the composition of the commission was, more on the growth bend. They were trying to get units. They approved 3,000 units of development in that 4 years. It was, full gas. Mostly former Commissioner Mike Meyer, and then to a lesser extent, but also on the same page, Merritt, former Commissioner Matheson. They were driving that. That was the culture on the commission at the time, which clearly has pulled back, since then. But if there was redevelopment that was going to happen, it was going to be more units, max height, more units for the affordable housing. Right. There was a mixture. It wasn't all affordable housing, but it was units. We're going to buy volume of units, somehow make it more affordable because the state won't let you do rent control. So they were trying to jockey some of these deals where we'll give you more density if you can guarantee that 10% of them are within a certain threshold, but nobody can really follow up anyway.
That was all before, too, the new state regulations that basically allow somebody to, as long as they're having a certain percentage of low cost. I don't know what the threshold is, but
it's a certain percentage of your AMI. So when we've done the math, I think it was something like $2,000 a month.
Basically, you can do anything you want, though.
But you have to have 40% of those units be, you have to basically add an additional 40% of those units to your project. And think about that from a business loan standpoint, right? You're going to go to the bank and say, we have a floating rent that's going to be based on AMI. Can we get a loan for this project where 40% of the unit rental prices is going to be based on an indeterminate amount of money that could drop through the floor? I don't know.
But people are doing it.
So far in the city, we've been blessed that nobody's really... It's more of like a crowbar, a veiled threat to get the project you want in anyway approved so far. The county, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the county, if that's an issue with them. I'm sure there's a lot of crowbarring going on. But
Well, people are going to be coming here for a long time. We have the sunshine. We have no state income
it's
tax.
heaven, man. This is paradise.
And not only do we have people coming from all over the country that are retiring, but we have the effect of people coming from the overdeveloped South Florida up north. And guess what the first stop is? Because of the way the county regulations are set up, we've got all that farmland really that is not going to be developed unless they make certain changes. So Stewart, Hope Sound and Stewart's the first stop.
Palm Beach
A lot
is
of
built
people
out.
pass over us and go to Port St. Lucie for the price benefits, but we have that. There's something about this area, so people are going to keep coming here. So it needs to be just done as wisely as possible. But my big thing is allow that to be out in the other areas where they're already built out for that.
The apartments? What do you mean?
Yeah. Some of it should be, some of it should, like the project that I complimented the city on. It's that's a great little project. So it's just everything needs to be balanced, but it's got to be done wisely.
Well, we went pretty hard in that last 4 years, so we're pretty far ahead in terms of new unit development. I don't think there's going to be any pressure on us, from the state anytime soon in terms of the city, the county maybe, but to do your part, kind of a thing. You're not making enough units for people.
Sure.
But more than just volume of people, part of my philosophy or war of what I'm trying to fight for is ownership. So you do need a stock of rentals for people who don't want to own or for whatever reason. But without getting into Marxism or heavy duty conversations about communism or anything like that, I think a stronger community is going to center around the ability to own property. If and again, of the 3,000 units that we approved, the vast majority are rentals. You don't, and all of those new doors that you created in spaces for humans to dwell, nobody can own any piece of that lives here. And those projects are very profitable for hedge funds who they get sold to, and they turn into assets. But at the end of the day, those are traded assets that nobody from here will ever own that dirt again that they sit on. That can go to a hedge fund, or China can own it, or anybody else. And the people who live here that have a direct stake in this community may not ever own the dirt that box sits on, which I do see as a threat to the long-term, quality of community.
Yes.
And again, nothing against rental apartments specifically, but balancing to where you do give people the opportunity to own something.
It's very important.
They can have a stake in this place.
Family.
Right.
Absolutely. It's key.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why a lot of people do go to Port St. Lucie, because they can own a single family home for a more reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough thing right now.
I know.
My daughter just bought a home,
Mm-hmm.
a single family home.
It's through the roof everywhere.
The prices are very high.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's not just a Florida problem either, or a Martin County problem. That's my fear, is that you have this huge boom, and we approve all of these units and build, and the price is still high. But this is a deep conversation that can go far, but our level of service, right? We've intentionally in Martin County kept our level of service poor, meaning our roads, right? We have narrow roads. We don't have wide open 8-lane everything. We chose over decades to keep this place small town in terms of, roads are one example. You can't do what other places are doing right now in terms of height and density, and it affect this area with our infrastructure the same way. We're going to
Right.
be particularly sensitive to too much traffic. You know, you don't have that level of service, and forever we used it to keep development at bay. Donna Melzer and the previous generations of growth management folks. So when you start to do that urbanism thing here with the boxes and the units to try to combat affordable housing or whatever, what are the repercussions of that? Because traffic studies will come in front of us, and who knows if it's even real. You hear the recent one with the county where developing the ag land will decrease the number of trips. You think about that. There's cows there. There's nobody even over there, but somehow the new development will decrease the trip number. It's insane.
Yeah.
So, truly comprehensively looking at your community and what are the long-term repercussions of approving to try to fix a short-term problem that may or may not even be fixed
Sure.
by what you're trying to do. And
This is great that you're thinking of, putting so much thought into all this. And
I have kids, man. I got little kids.
Well, I have to say,
What's this place going to be like when they're my age and their kids are my age? And
I have to compliment you on even wanting to get involved. Being a real estate attorney and sitting through a lot of commission meetings, county commission meetings, city commission meetings over the years.
it's a lot.
I don't think people realize really what's involved. It's a huge sacrifice just to sit through the meetings and to have to listen to, people are all going to get up and they're going to talk, and some of them are very nasty.
Yeah.
And not only that, you've also got with social media, you're dealing with it all day long. People
That is true.
emailing you, calling you.
That is true.
Look up in your feed. You can't escape it.
Nope.
It's a huge sacrifice. So I thank you and
Thank
all
you.
the people involved
Yeah.
on the commission. That it's really a lot of work. I don't think people understand what's involved. And then
I
not only
didn't.
that,
I had no idea.
You need to understand the community. You need to understand the problems, the issues, and you have to be creative and figuring out ways to make things better. And then you've got to deal with the other people, and you got to deal with there's issues with staff. There's issues with
Thankfully,
interest,
city
so-
managers doing that kind of stuff. I'm removed from the
oh yeah
personnel side of the city.
Yeah.
It's usually me bugging them, but I will say I agree. If you could do it with less energy, you could just kind of look through an agenda and get a sense of it, make a few calls, see how the people
Yeah.
that you trust feel about it. And
yeah
but if you like I said, every one of these potential projects or things that come along could be there for 50 or 100 years, right? My kids will be looking at them. How are they going to affect this community visually, but traffic, all of these implications, to really make a good judgment call, because it's effectively what you are. You're a judge. You can often be a lawyer too, right? When you're advocating for a thing, but to really make a good judgment, I feel a lot of weight and pressure to do a good job. And to do that properly requires a lot of you. You know,
yeah.
it's a lot of your energy that does take away from your business and your family. And, if you're going to do it the best it could be done, which is like, that's how I like to roll with whatever
Yeah.
I'm doing. I don't want to do anything halfway.
Well, I think it's great that we have somebody who's a family person with 4 children. And you've lived here how long?
So my family moved to Lighthouse Point in Palm City in 1998. So I started high school at Martin County High School. I was a freshman in 99 or whatever. So I've been here for that long.
Great.
But we moved into the city. I got married and we bought a house over off Flamingo 6 years ago.
Great.
But
Beautiful area. And
it's the
you've
best.
got a vested interest here, so you care. But it shows.
I never want to leave, man.
I can tell.
I talked to some of the developers, and they got their cabin in North Carolina. This is a business opportunity, and then they're going to go retire up there. I'm never leaving, man. This is it. This is my stake in the sand. I want my family to be one of the hallmark families that help make Stewart better over decades. Like, I've chosen this to be my homestead and my settlement, just like those old guys did in the 1860s, but this is where I've picked. This is where we will be. I'm not leaving. This is not an investment opportunity for me. My business is, I'm not going up to Vero or West Palm or,
Sure.
This is it. So
Great. That's a great outlook, I think.
I'm all in, man.
Well, I think your service is very important, and I'm grateful for it, and for everybody involved. I mean, you were talking about, our city manager. We're blessed to have somebody who
Mike's awesome.
who has the experience as an attorney, being involved in governmental law for so long. What a benefit that is to have
He's a stud.
him now at the helm, and he has such a vested interest in this community, such deep roots here with his family.
Yep. Lives a couple streets over. He's here.
The Mortels and the Baratas, that family is. When I came here in the 90s, they were so kind and generous and helpful to us, and it's great to have somebody like that as the manager now.
I've probably learned more from him, on the fly as things are coming up, and picking his brain, because he's so free to teach. He's, among his other things he does, he's teaching me, operationally, historically, which helps me make good decisions, So I really appreciate him. He's been a huge asset.
Great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So what do you see? What's your vision?
I see, like you mentioned, the city's going to be redeveloping, right? We're almost built out in terms of green space being eaten up. So truly protecting the green space that you do have, like that 0.5-cent sales tax is brewing with Martin County forever. I see if the city's portion comes in, I'd love us to really develop our parks, kind of what you're talking about with the City Hall parcel. Also Haney Creek. I see with ecotourism that the green space and parks are very valuable and will increasingly be as we redevelop.
Mm-hmm.
So putting energy and money into those attractions so that people want to, come and enjoy them. And then preserving the character of the city. Like you said, it's always going to be a bit of a hodgepodge, kind of mishmash of what gets built. That's kind of the funky character of the city to some extent. You got like the Spanish Revival buildings, and then the Potsdam, kind of classic buildings. So there's a little bit of hodgepodge, but as projects are coming up, being very picky, being willing and able to say no, because we're getting to the point where, like I said, it's built out. So be picky and make it count. If you're going to approve it and it's going to cause more traffic, or make it count. You can't. Now's not the time to be throwing easy yeses around. Be picky. And then as projects come in front of us for redevelopment, again, be picky, say no if it doesn't match. Every one of these should add to what makes this place special and not even come close to detract. It should not be a net neutral in terms of form and, aesthetic and function. It should be, if you're going to approve it, it should be a benefit to the overall value of, what's your USP here? What is the unique selling point of this place? What's the proposition here? It's that golden goose. So everything that comes in front of you should be, taken from a judgment standpoint through that. And it's either making it better or making it worse. You can't be lazy now. I'm getting a little soapboxy, but
no, that's a great perspective.
Making this place more valuable, making it better.
It's special. There's something very special that everybody recognizes it. And
value, not just in terms of money, right? So there's that nondescript exactly, maybe it doesn't exactly follow ad valorem, but it adds value.
yeah, you know, something else is the people here that we're talking about, the people like Mike, the people in general, there's something about the character of people in general in this area that is a step above. I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm not quite sure why that is.
Dig into it. I think you're on it. The caliber, the quality.
You know, even like, for example, in our school system, they have that slogan, character counts in Martin County. But I think we have to exhibit that, you know, in every aspect of our lives. And in what you're doing, you know, you just discussed that, you know, what is, you know, how can I do this job as a commissioner, you know, with character, which means, you know, not necessarily doing what's going to bring in the most bucks for the tax rolls, but what's really the right thing to do? What's the right thing to do for this whole town? You know, balancing everything, the history, the charm, the economics, you know, the people that don't have housing, balancing all that in such a way that is done as righteously as possible. I think that's what you just basically said in a nutshell. So I'm in agreement with that 100%.
Whatever you're going to do, if you're going to do it, it might as well be done right. Don't go with the easy thing. Sometimes the easy thing's the right thing. Sometimes you don't have to put a lot of energy into it. It's obvious. But I don't know, usually it seems like the right thing requires more effort or courage, or, you know, not to get too lofty, but time, energy to decipher through and make sure it's the right thing.
Absolutely.
Well, we're at 1:51. You got anything else? See how fast it is? It's quick, right?
I just want to thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Really pleasure to talk to you.
If anything,
thank you for your service to our city.
Thank you. If anything's coming up in the future or worth talking about, you know, I'd love to have you come back and talk. I feel like we're very much on similar pages. So
yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely.
I'll come bug you and see if you want to come do it again.
And you still need to come by. I'm going to give you a tour.
I am beyond looking forward to that because I've never been inside of the Colorado Inn or
there's some amazing
any of these buildings.
We give a tour. We give a free. Anybody could come for a free tour, and we take you around all the properties. We take you through the hallways. We've got old photos and all sorts of little tidbits. There's so much great history of some.
Are you the historian, or you have somebody?
Well, I've learned a lot from the Thurlow family, and you know, everybody knows a little bit. Our staff knows a little bit about, and is able to give a tour, and tell the history. But there's a lot, you wouldn't believe some of the great little anecdotes. There's something really special we have there in downtown Stewart, and I'm grateful for the support that I've received from, you know, the city and helping me keep all this going, and, you know, from the people in general who have supported us and helped us grow. We've become like, if you look on the reviews like TripAdvisor, and if you go onto like Expedia, we're beating out all of these. We were talking about the billion-dollar corporations. Old Colorado Inn is the number one because on all of them. TripAdvisor, Expedia, every single one, based upon customer reviews, we're the number one hotel on the Treasure Coast. So I'm very proud of that.
Because how do you beat that? How do you beat that history and that customer service and all of that rich? You can't put a price on that. It's the quality of what you're getting by coming to Colorado versus, you know, no offense to any of the big boxes, but can't touch it. So keep doing what you're doing too.
Oh, thank you. And so I'm just very grateful for that, for the opportunity to continue doing it.
I hope you will.
I do too.
Because we need more and more of that. And let me know how I can help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If and when you're seeing, like we talked about St. Augustine, or any ideas that I can help bring into the city too, for how to help preserve, and renovate and some of these older buildings.
Absolutely.
All right.
Great. We'll
Well,
talk more. Such
been a
pleasure,
pleasure.
Chris. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir. Absolutely.
Thank you. You have a blessed day, okay?
You too.